Hello, welcome back. My name is Lucy. I am 42 years old and this is my YouTube channel dedicated to all things perimenopause and menopause. This video is actually the second part of a two-part series where I'm talking about my favorite key women of influence in this space, those women who are really changing the future. The future's for all of us women. If you haven't seen the first part and you're really curious to understand who you should be listening to, go back and watch part one where I introduce Dr. Mary Haver, Dr. Jessica Shepherd, and Dr. Vonda Wright. Go back and watch that video first if you haven't watched it already, because those for me are really like the first three women that will really help provide a basic foundation. If you have seen that video or you're also really interested in a few more advanced techniques and viewpoints and thoughts, this is the video that you should be watching. If you like the video, if you learned something, don't forget to stick the thumbs up. And please also subscribe if you're interested in hearing more from me in the future. But as I said, today's video is much more on some slightly more advanced viewpoints and thoughts, which are really useful if you've already been implementing a lot of the basics that we can learn through some of the other key women of influence that I have talked about in my first video. Today, I'm actually going to start off with a quote that I found from Sara. Now, Sara Szal, she is a doctor. She actually used to be Sarah Gottfried, and she actually got divorced in 2023. I came across her first. I came across her actually on my two favorite podcasts, on Huberman Labs and then also on Diary of a CEO. But actually when I started to do a little bit of rooting around, I found this really amazing quote on her website, which really resonated with me because of what I believe about perimenopause and menopause really being an invitation for women to actually get to know ourselves better, and for us actually to work with our transition as opposed to fighting it. I'm just going to read this quote that I found on Sara's website. Maybe all the symptoms are a way to guide you to the company of other women who are like-minded and seeking meaning in what can be a rocky transition. It's like a light switch that's going from off to on in terms of embodied wisdom, an energetic process. Together, we can redefine and emerge in a new role as wisdom keepers, no longer hamstrung and limited by the reproductive function. I'm not the first person to describe hormonal transition as an initiation. Jean Shonda-Bolin, MD, a psychiatrist and Jungian analyst, explores the wise woman archetype. She describes menopause literally meno, blood, and pause, stop, as withholding of blood, not to make children as we did in our teens, 20s and 30s, but withholding blood to make wisdom. You can probably understand why that appeals to me and why I think it's extremely exciting. I personally have found that actually my female relationships through this time of transition in my life has actually been the most important thing for me. I'm a single woman. I live on my own, and actually my female connections are probably more important to me than many of my relationships have been in the past, because we're all in this together. And I really love as well what she says about ancestral wisdom. It feels very fitting for me right now. And she, for me, Sara, while she comes from a scientific background, she actually really connects with the ancestral part, which really appeals to me as well. In her podcast, and again, I will link to all of the resources that I'm referencing in the show notes, she also talks about hormones as being like these text messages that help us to understand what's going on in our bodies and to make changes. She also talks a lot about cortisol and trauma, which I also found extremely interesting. I feel that Sara has some really great points and some much more emotional and thoughtful perspectives on the menopause and perimenopause changes. For me, Sara, if you want to kind of take it to the next level and you're looking for a little bit more of a spiritual angle on perimenopause and menopause, I definitely recommend that you check out her work. I know that she's also written a couple of books. I know that she also runs retreats, and she's just got like a really cool energy. A couple of other things that I also learned from Dr. Sara is around endocrine disruptors. Now, this was kind of new news for me, but things like perfumes, things like anything that we're using on our bodies that are perfumed, also obviously BPAs, stuff like that. She actually covers a lot of that. Aside from all of the regular stuff that you're going to hear from lots of the menopause influencers that I've already talked about, she also has some really, really specific insights around how everything that we surround ourselves with, the toxins from daily life, we should be trying to limit those. For me, that was really, really amazing information. Definitely go and check out Dr. Sara if you're looking for a little bit more of like ancient wise wisdom coupled obviously with scientific knowledge and amazing credentials, of course. Then my next advanced practitioner in the menopause and perimenopause space is Lisa Mosconi. She is like the parents of nuclear physicists or something crazy, and she is incredibly smart. Now, again, I came across her on the Diary of a CEO podcast, and I think what I really loved specifically about Lisa was really her viewpoint that actually had this view that menopause is starting in the ovaries. Actually, it's starting in the brain. A lot of the research that she is doing is around all of the changes that are happening in our brains, and that obviously ties really, really nicely into all of the things around like why as individuals we start to change how we feel, like we start to change who we are. And one of the things that she talks about that I absolutely love is like, this is basically like a brain renovation. With Lisa, she's much more of the mental element to menopause, which I just absolutely love. The other thing that I really, really have so much to thank Lisa for is her reference. She actually talks in the podcast about the grandmother hypothesis. Now, if you've seen my video, Truth versus Lies, I touch on the grandmother hypothesis on that. But essentially the thought is that back in the day, Mr. Sigmund Freud, not a fan of him, for many reasons, but one of them was that he basically said that women, once they were post-fertile, they were no longer useful for society. Now, we just know that nature doesn't work like that. In my view, well, why would women go through menopause if it wasn't to have some benefit to a community? And so this is where I first heard about the grandmother hypothesis, which is actually that these changes meant that the grandmother who was no longer fertile was actually able to put all of her energy into making sure that her grandchildren and her children were actually having everything that they needed. The grandmother would often go out foraging for tubers and roots whilst the men were off hunting, looking for livestock, looking for meat. But the grandmother was making sure that everybody stayed alive, making sure that information was passed down across generations. So actually, the brain rewiring was to support this new role in community. And you can see again that this ties really nicely back to what I was saying at the beginning with Sara, and this kind of sense that women and community all coming together. For me, like this really feels like very, very powerful. Again, like I said, for me, Lisa's focus on the brain, this upgrade, this mindset that actually if we look after the process, we are in control of that and we can go on and do great and incredible things, which if you have a look at my first video and you enjoyed this one, you can actually see that all of the women that I reference are absolutely out there smashing life. And for me, that's extremely inspiring. So really just to end on the final point about Lisa, this brain rewiring is incredibly powerful and we should celebrate it, and we should celebrate going into this new phase. We should look after our vital organ because it's extremely powerful and potent. Right, and now on to my sixth lady. 3 in the first video, 3 in this video. I think some of you might be able to guess where I'm going with this, but obviously it's Stacy Sims. Now, Stacy has received criticism. I know that some people feel quite strongly about some of the things that Stacy says, but for me, Stacy is incredible. And I really think she has really pushed the envelope on all of the research around women in sport. Now, the reason why Stacy's in my kind of more advanced perimenopause, menopause educator is because she really does focus on a fitter, healthier, more active woman in terms of how they're showing up, how they should be training, the things that we should be doing. And honestly, most of my protocols for training now come from Stacy Sims. There were some things that I changed about the way that I was training and eating based on what I learned from Stacy. Stacy is an exercise physiologist. She's a researcher. She has contributed so much to the research field, and she's also an ex-athlete. For me, Stacy, whilst there may be some criticism online about some of the things that she says, for me as an active woman, I absolutely think that everything that she has to say has been incredibly useful for me. You can also check out my video that I did on fasting between her. It's a comparison between her and Mindy Pelz. But for me, Dr. Stacy is incredibly important. A couple of things around Stacy is that she really is focused on the active woman. She is also really focused on making sure that we have enough protein. She recommends eating 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up. Now, that was not something that I was originally doing. But since following that protocol, I actually found that my body felt a lot less stressed. I also then stopped training fasted. She really doesn't recommend that for the cortisol spikes. Again, that was something that I did. And she also says that once you finish training, it's super important that you then fuel yourself within 30 minutes of exercise. Really, her whole thing is the protocols that work for men do not work for perimenopause or menopausal women. Women are not small men. And really that's her catchphrase. And I think the things that she is contributing in terms of the research realm is just incredible. So for me, Stacy was an easy one to include in this list. And she is like blowing up big time. I started following her on Instagram probably about maybe 6 months to a year ago when I first saw her on the Huberman Lab podcast. And she is now at like 800,000 followers. She is doing absolutely awesome and just an all-round incredible human being, athlete, and really gives a shit about making sure that research is being done specifically for women. Then we have it, my top 3 more advanced, Dr. Sara, who's out there with some really interesting thoughts around women, community, ancient knowledge, and also just generally some really specific ideas around making sure that we keep our bodies really clean, keeping endocrine disruptors out of them, and all of that kind of stuff. Go and check out her work for more specific ideas on that. Dr. Lisa, who is all about brain health and brain function, who gets very specific about things that you can do, and also introduced me to the grandmother hypothesis, which I will be eternally grateful for. And finally, Stacy, who has really helped me change the way that I think about training, eating, supplementation. Those are my top 3 picks of women who are a little bit more advanced in the perimenopause and menopause influencer world. I hope you found this video interesting. I hope you found it useful. Please like it, please share it, please subscribe. I will be making more videos soon. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it, and hopefully you found this useful. All the best. Bye.